Days turned into weeks, and as the months passed, Jason and Lyra found themselves settling into a routine that felt both comforting and new. The tension that had once hung between them like a storm cloud was slowly dissipating, replaced by a quiet understanding and a growing sense of connection. They no longer tiptoed around each other, afraid to speak their truths. They were honest, vulnerable, and open, ready to face whatever came next. Together, it wasn't easy, of course. Lyra still carried the weight of the past, and Jason knew that the healing process would take time. There were moments when the old pain resurfaced, moments when Lyra would retreat into herself, lost in her thoughts. But each time that happened, Jason was there, steady and unwavering, waiting for her to come back to him. One evening, as they sat in the small living room of Lyra's apartment, Jason glanced over at her. She was reading a book, her face illuminated by the soft glow of the lamp beside her. Her brow furrowed slightly in concentration, but Jason could see the peaceful expression on her face. It was the first time in a long while that she looked truly at ease, and it made his heart swell with relief. "You know, I think this might actually be the most peaceful moment I've had in a while," Lyra said, her voice breaking the silence. She looked up from the book, her gaze meeting Jason's. "I didn't think I'd ever feel this way again. I thought the past would always haunt me." Jason smiled softly. "You deserve peace, Lyra. You've been through so much. I think you're finally allowing yourself to heal." She put the book down and leaned back against the couch, a thoughtful expression on her face. "It's strange, you know? Spent so long running from everything, trying to bury the pain. But now when I look at you, I feel like I can finally breathe. I feel like I don't have to hide anymore." Jason reached out and took her hand, squeezing it gently. "You don't have to hide, Lyra. Not from me. I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." Her eyes softened, and for a moment she didn't say anything. She just looked at him, her fingers tracing the lines of his hand as if she were reassuring herself that he was really there. "I think I'm starting to believe you," she said quietly, her voice filled with sincerity. I think I can start to let go of the fear." Jason's heart swelled with emotion. For so long he had wished for this moment for Lyra to let go of her pain and fear and allow herself to love again. He had always known she was strong, but seeing her embrace her vulnerability, seeing her take that step toward healing, was more than he had ever hoped for. "It's not going to happen overnight," Jason said, his voice steady. "But we'll take it one step at a time. Together." Lyra nodded, a small smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "Together," she echoed. It was a simple word, but it held so much weight. For the first time in a long time, it felt like the beginning of something new. They had both made mistakes. Both had carried burdens they hadn't known how to share. But now, they were choosing to move forward together, no longer held back by the past. Over the next few weeks, Jason and Lyra spent more time together, learning how to live without the shadows of fear and guilt hanging over them. They explored new places in the city, went for long walks in the park, and talked late into the night about everything and nothing. It was as if they were rediscovering each other, finding their way back to the love they had once shared. But there were still challenges ahead. Jason knew that Lyra's past would always be a part of her, and he knew that healing wasn't a linear process. There would be moments when the weight of her choices, the sacrifices she had made, would threaten to pull her under again. And when those moments came, he would be there to remind her that she wasn't alone. One afternoon, as they walked through a quiet street lined with blooming trees, Lyra turned to Jason with a thoughtful expression. "You know," she said slowly, "I've been thinking a lot about what you said the other day about moving forward, about shaping our future. I think I'm ready to start doing that, to stop running and just ... live." Jason smiled at her, his heart full. "Proud of you, Lyra. You've come so far." She looked at him, a small but genuine smile forming on her lips. "I couldn't have done it without you. You've helped me see that I don't have to carry everything alone, that I can trust again." Jason squeezed her hand gently, his voice soft. "I'll always be here for you, no matter what." They continued to walk side by side, their steps in sync, the quiet sound of their footsteps the only noise in the peaceful afternoon. For the first time in a long time, Lyra felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. The pain of the past was still there, but it didn't define her anymore. She had learned to forgive herself, to accept that she had done the best she could with the cards she had been dealt. And now, she was ready to build something new. As the days passed, they began to talk about the future more openly. They discussed their dreams, their hopes, and the things they wanted to achieve together. Jason knew that they had a long road ahead of them, but he was no longer afraid of the challenges that might come. They would face them together as a team, and nothing could tear them apart. One evening, as they sat on the rooftop of Lyra's apartment building, watching the stars appear in the darkening sky, Jason turned to her, his voice soft but filled. With sincerity, "Lyra," he said, his eyes locked onto hers, "I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I know it hasn't been easy, and I know there will still be hard days ahead, but I'm willing to face them all, as long as it's with you." Lyra's breath caught in her throat, her heart racing at his words. She had never imagined this moment, but now that it was here, it felt like everything had led up to this. She had spent so long running, so long hiding from the love she'd always felt for him, but now she was ready to embrace it, to build a future that was free from the chains of the past. "I feel the same way." "Jason," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I don't know what the future holds, but I know I want to face it with you." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of their words settling between them. In that moment, nothing else mattered. The past was behind them, and the future was waiting, full of promise. Together, they would create a new beginning. The days that followed Jason's confrontation with Lyra felt like a whirlwind. The truth was finally out, and although it had been a painful revelation, it seemed to bring with it a kind of clarity. For the first time in years, they were both facing the past together, no more secrets between them. But the air was still thick with the weight of everything that had happened, the pain, the lost time, the unspoken words. They both knew they couldn't just pick up where they left off, not after all that had passed. But they also knew they couldn't keep running from it either. Jason spent the next few days at Lyra's apartment, trying to be there for her in the way she had always needed. She was still distant at times, lost in thought. But he could see the small changes, the way she would let her guard down for just a moment, or how she would meet his gaze. Her eyes filled with something he hadn't seen before, hope. One afternoon, they were sitting together on the balcony of her apartment, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and purple. Jason was quiet, just enjoying the moment, but Lyra was restless. She had been like this ever since he returned, constantly moving, as if she couldn't sit still long enough to process everything. "I never realized how much I was running from," she said, her voice soft but heavy. She didn't look at him as she spoke, but Jason could hear the emotion in her words. "All these years I thought I was doing the right thing, but now I see how much I was trying to escape. I buried everything inside of me, my pain, my regrets, my love for you. I thought it would go away if I just kept moving forward." Jason turned to her, his heart aching at the vulnerability in her voice. "You don't have to carry it alone anymore, Lyra. I'm here. I know it's not going to be easy, but we can face it together." Lyra finally looked at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and longing. "I don't know how to fix what I've done. I don't know how to make it right." Jason reached over and gently took her hand. "It's not about fixing everything, Lyra. It's about moving forward. We can't change the past, but we can shape the future. We can make it better together." For a moment, there was silence. Between them, Lyra's gaze drifted to the horizon, lost in her thoughts. Jason could see the storm brewing in her mind, the guilt, the regret, the fear. He knew that no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't just forget everything that had happened. But what he hoped for, what he believed, was that together they could find a way to move past it. "You don't hate me?" Lyra asked, her voice so small, so fragile, that Jason felt a pang of sympathy for her. She had carried this burden for so long that she had started to believe the worst about herself. "No," Jason said firmly, his hand tightening around hers. "I could never hate you, Lyra. You've been through so much. I never knew what you were going through, but now that I do, I just want to be here for you. I want to help you heal." She shook her head as if she couldn't quite believe him. "I've done so much damage, Jason. I've hurt so many people, and I've hurt you. You don't deserve any of this." Jason squeezed her hand. "I'm not going anywhere. Out. You don't have to carry this alone anymore. I'm here, and I'm not leaving." Lyra's eyes filled with tears, and for the first time since Jason returned, she let herself cry. She turned toward him, burying her face in his chest, and Jason held her close, his heart aching for the pain she had endured. She had been through so much, hiding behind walls that she had built to protect herself. But now, here she was, letting herself feel the weight of everything that had happened. "I've missed you so much." "Jason," she whispered, her voice muffled by his shirt, "I never stopped loving you. But I was too afraid to let you in. Too afraid to let anyone in." Jason stroked her hair gently, his heart swelling with both love and sorrow. "I know, Lyra, I know. But we're here now, and we have a chance to start over. We can build something new, together." They stayed like that for a long time, Lyra in his arms, her sobs slowly fading as the evening wore on. The weight of the past still hung between them, but it felt lighter somehow, as though they had taken the first step toward healing. Jason didn't know what the future would hold, but for the first time in a long time, he felt hopeful. The next few days were a blur of quiet moments and tentative conversations. They spent time together, slowly rebuilding the trust that had been broken by years of separation. Jason didn't pressure her to talk about everything all at once. He knew that healing was a process, and it couldn't be rushed. But every day, he saw more of the old Lyra, the strong, brave woman he had fallen in love with. The woman who had sacrificed so much for him, even when he had no idea. One evening, as they sat on the couch in her apartment, Jason asked a question that had been on his mind for days. "Do you ever regret it? Everything you did to protect me?" Lyra looked at him, her eyes soft, but filled with sadness. "I don't know if I can say I regret it. It was the only choice I had at the time. But I regret not telling you the truth. I regret not being honest with you sooner." Jason nodded, understanding. "I get it. You were trying to protect me. But I think I would have been strong enough to handle it if you had just trusted me with the truth." Lyra's eyes filled with tears again. "I didn't trust myself. I thought I was doing the right thing, but I hurt you in the process. I didn't realize until now how much I was running from." Jason reached out and gently wiped away her tears. "It's okay, Lyra. We can't change the past, but we can choose to move forward, together." She smiled softly, a hint of the woman he had loved so long ago returning to her eyes. "Together," she whispered. As the days passed, they slowly rebuilt what had been lost. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't quick, but they both knew they were on the right path. The road ahead was still uncertain, and there would be challenges to face, but Jason was willing to face them with her. No matter what had happened in the past, no matter how much time they had lost, they had each other now. And that was enough to give them both the strength to keep moving forward. Jason sat back in his chair, trying to process the bombshell Lyra had just dropped. The weight of her words hung heavy in the air, and he felt as though the ground beneath him had suddenly shifted. He couldn't understand how much pain she must have been through all these years, keeping such a heavy secret. His heart ached for her, and he couldn't shake the image of her sitting across from him looking so lost. "I never wanted to hurt you, Jason." Lyra's voice was soft, almost as if she were talking to herself. She stared at her coffee cup, swirling the liquid gently, avoiding his gaze. "I did what I thought was right, but I didn't realize how much it would cost me." Jason leaned forward, his voice full of concern. "You didn't hurt me, Lyra. You kept me alive. I can't believe you did all of that for me. But why didn't you come to me sooner?" "I would have understood. I couldn't," she interrupted, her eyes now locked on his. The intensity in her gaze sent a shiver down Jason's spine. "I had to bury the truth, Jason. If I had come to you, if I had let you in, it would have meant you'd become a target again. I couldn't risk that." Jason's chest tightened as he tried to absorb her words. He understood now why she'd been so distant, so cold. She had carried this burden alone. protecting him from a danger she couldn't even explain.
All the years.
They had been apart. She had been fighting her own battle, one that he had known nothing about. He reached out, his hand gently covering hers. She didn't pull away, but she didn't seem to find comfort in the touch either, just sat there, silently lost in her thoughts. "I thought I had moved on," she whispered after a long silence. "I tried so hard to make it seem like I was okay. I didn't want anyone to know how much I was hurting, especially you." Jason's heart broke at the sound of her voice, the vulnerability that had been hidden beneath the walls she had built around herself. He wanted to pull her close, to tell her that she didn't have to carry the weight alone anymore, but he didn't know if she would let him. "So what now?" Jason asked, his voice low but full of determination. "Now that I know the truth, are you going to keep running from this?" Lyra met his gaze, her eyes searching his, as if trying to read his thoughts. She opened her mouth to speak, but then hesitated, as if unsure of how to put her feelings into words. "I don't know what's next." "Jason," she said finally, her voice trembling, "I've spent so long keeping this secret buried inside me that I don't even know who I am anymore. I don't know how to move on from this." Jason squeezed her hand gently, his thumb rubbing small circles over her knuckles. "You don't have to figure it out alone. We can figure this out together." Lyra looked down at their intertwined hands, and for a moment, there was a flicker of something that reminded Jason of the girl he had once known. The girl he had loved so deeply, the girl who had always been strong, no matter what. "I was so afraid, Jason," Lyra continued, her voice quieter now, "afraid that you would hate me if you knew the truth, afraid that you would think I was just using you, that I didn't care about you." Jason shook his head, his heart aching. "For her, Lyra, I could never hate you. You saved my life, over and over. And all that time, when I thought you had moved on, I was just trying to survive without you. I had no idea what you were going through. If I had, I would have done everything I could to be there for you." The pain in Lyra's eyes deepened, and she pulled her hand away from his, running it through her hair in frustration. "I didn't want to ask for help, Jason. I didn't want to drag you into my mess. You were already fighting a war. I didn't want to burden you with mine." Jason stood up, moving to the other side of the table, closing the distance between them. He knelt in front of her, gently lifting her chin so that she had no choice but to look at him. "Lyra, you're not a burden. I'm here for you. Always have been. I've been fighting for you too in my own way. I was always ready to come back to you. You never had to go through this alone." She stared at him, her breath shaky as if his words were too much to process. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "I don't know how to fix what's been broken." Jason shook his head. "We don't have to fix everything right now. We can start by being honest with each other. Let's not hide from what happened. We'll take it one step at a time." Lyra looked down, her eyes filling with tears. "I don't know if I'm strong enough for this," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I've been pretending for so long, pretending that I could let you go, that I could forget about us." Jason gently cupped her face in his hands, wiping away the tears that had begun to fall. "You don't have to pretend anymore. You don't have to do this alone. We can start fresh together." For the first time in a long while, Lyra allowed herself to lean into him, her head resting against his shoulder. The moment was fragile, but in that fragile moment, they both felt the weight of the years slipping away. She didn't need to carry the burden anymore. Jason was there, and he was ready to help her heal, just as she had once helped him. "I never stopped loving you," Lyra whispered into his ear. "I just didn't know how to come back." Jason tightened his arms around her, pulling her closer. "I never stopped loving you either, Lyra, no matter what happened, no matter how far apart we were. I've always loved you," the words hung in the air between them, and for the first time in years it felt like the past didn't matter. We're both here in the present, and whatever the future held, they would face it together. The secrets, the pain, the lost time, it didn't matter anymore. They had each other, and that was all that mattered now. The days following Jason's return were a blur. He spent most of his time in the city, trying to readjust to the world that had moved on without him. The quiet, peaceful life on Earth felt so different from the chaos and danger of the war. The streets he had once walked felt strange now. The people, the places, everything seemed unfamiliar. But through it all, one thing lingered in his mind. Lyra. After their brief cold meeting, Jason couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. She had been so distant, almost as if she were a stranger. She had always been strong, yes, but this was something different. Something was missing in the way she looked at him, in the way she spoke. It was as if she had closed off a part of herself, a part that once belonged to him. Jason couldn't leave it alone. He knew he needed answers. After several days of silently watching her from afar, he finally decided to reach out again. He knew it wasn't going to be easy, but he couldn't let her go without understanding what had really happened. He had to know what she had been through while he was away. He found her at the old cafe they used to visit together, the one tucked away on a quiet street corner. The scent of fresh coffee still lingered in the air, but it wasn't the same. Without her sitting across from him, laughing at his jokes and sharing stories, she had always loved this place. Jason stood in the doorway for a moment, watching her from afar. She was sitting by the window, a coffee cup in front of her, staring out at the busy street with a vacant look in her eyes. It was almost as if she was waiting for someone, but the emptiness in her expression made Jason's heart ache. He took a deep breath and stepped inside. Lyra didn't notice him at first, lost in her thoughts. It wasn't until Jason sat down across from her that she looked up. Her eyes widened slightly, but her expression didn't change. "You don't give up easily, do you?" she said, her voice cold but not unkind. Jason hesitated before answering. "I can't stop thinking about what happened, Lyra. What's going on with you?" "What happened while I was gone?" She stared at him, her gaze hard. "You don't need to know," she replied. "It's in the past." "I know it's been a long time," Jason said, his voice softening. "But I can't believe you've just moved on from everything. From us." Lyra looked away, her fingers lightly tapping on her coffee cup. "It's not that simple, Jason. You don't understand. You were gone for so long, I had no choice but to keep going. I didn't have a choice about anything." Jason leaned forward, trying to catch her eye. "I don't care what you had to do, Lyra. I care about you, and I need to understand. Please tell me what happened." She shook her head slowly. "You wouldn't believe me," she whispered, almost to herself. Jason felt a pang of frustration, but he kept his voice steady. "I will, Lyra, I swear. I just want to understand. I can't leave things like this." She seemed to struggle with something inside herself. Finally, after a long pause, she sighed deeply and set her cup down with a soft clink. "Do you remember when I told you I was working with the Alliance to help Earth?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jason nodded, confused. Of course, you said it was dangerous, that it would be hard. But you were always so sure about it." Lyra closed her eyes, as if the memory hurt her. "That was true, but there was more to it, much more. While you were gone, I was tasked with something. Something secret. Something that had to do with you." Jason's heart raced. "What do you mean? How could it have anything to do with me?" Lyra shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "I wasn't just working with the Alliance. I was working with their enemies, too. I had to. It was the only way to keep you safe." Jason's brow furrowed in confusion. "What are you talking about?" "What enemies? What do you mean? You had to keep me safe." Lyra looked at him, her eyes filled with guilt and something deeper, something he couldn't place. "You were a target, Jason, not just because you were a soldier. It was because of who you were, things you knew, the connections you had. There were people, aliens, who wanted you dead. And I knew it." Jason felt a cold chill run down his spine. "Why didn't you tell me?" "'Cause I couldn't," Lyra said quietly. "If I had, you would have been a bigger target. The only way to protect you was to hide the truth from everyone, even from you. I had to pretend to move on, to let you think I had forgotten about you. I did it all for you, Jason." Jason was stunned. His mind raced as he tried to process everything. She had just told him, but why? Why didn't you tell me what was going on? Why did you have to do it all alone? Lyra looked down, unable to meet his gaze. "'Cause if I had told you, you would have tried to stop me. Been greater." I had no choice but to cut myself off from everything, including you. You had to believe that I had moved on, that I was okay without you. It was the only way to keep you safe." Jason sat back, his mind spinning. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. For years he had thought that Lyra had moved on, that she had forgotten him. And now she was telling him that everything she had done, the distance, the silence, had been to protect him. "I had to live with that, Jason," she continued, her voice shaking. "I had to live with pretending for so long. It hurt. Every single day, but it was the only way to keep you alive." Jason reached out, his hand trembling as it rested on the table between them. "I had no idea. I never knew. ... I didn't want you to," Lyra said softly. "I wanted to keep you safe. But now that you're back, I don't know how to fix this. I don't know how to make it right." Jason felt the weight of everything she had gone through, the burden she had carried all alone. His heart ached for her, and he knew that there was no way he could ever repay her for what she had done. But one thing was clear now. She had never stopped loving him. He had to make sure she knew that she wasn't alone anymore. Jason had been away for what felt like a lifetime. The war with the alien forces had dragged on for years, each battle more dangerous than the last. When Earth's fleet had finally emerged victorious, Jason was among the first to return. His heart heavy with the weight of the battles he had fought and the friends he had lost, the transport ship touched down on Earth soil, and Jason stepped onto the familiar ground, his boots hitting the dirt with a soft thud. The air felt different, thinner somehow, as if the world had moved on without him. He had seen it in the brief messages from his old friends and family, a distant sort of cheerfulness, as if they had all found a way to keep going in his absence. He hadn't expected anything less, but it still stung. Jason didn't know what he had expected when he returned, but it certainly wasn't the icy reception he got. There were no crowds of well-wishers, no parades for the returning heroes. People he passed on the street didn't even glance his way, absorbed in their own lives to notice the man who had fought for their freedom. But there was one person who mattered. One person he had left behind all those years ago, the woman who had once been everything to him. Lyra, her name echoed in his mind, but when he saw her again, it felt as though a lifetime had passed. She had changed. Her once radiant smile was now tempered by a calm and distant demeanor. She stood just a few feet away, her eyes scanning the crowd, her posture rigid, as if bracing for something that never came. Jason took a hesitant step toward her, his heart pounding in his chest. She was just as beautiful as he remembered, but there was something else now, something he couldn't place. He couldn't read her expression, and for the first time in years, he felt unsure of himself. "Lyra," he called, his voice catching in his throat. She turned slowly, her expression unreadable. There was a moment of silence before she spoke, her voice soft but steady. "Jason, you're back." Jason swallowed, unsure of what to say. He had imagined this moment 1,000 times, but now that it was here, the words escaped him. "I didn't think you'd be here," he finally managed, his eyes searching her face for some sign of the warmth they had once shared. "I'm here," Lyra replied, her voice cool and controlled. "You're back. That's all that matters." Jason's heart sank at the distance in her voice. Was it really true? Had she moved on without him? Had the years of war and separation made their bond fade into nothing? He wanted to reach out to her, to take her hand and tell her that nothing had changed, that he had never stopped thinking about her. But the words got stuck in his throat. He looked at her, his mind racing for answers. She had always been the strong one, the one who could hold everything together, even when everything around them was falling apart. But now it seemed as though she was the one who was broken, and Jason couldn't help but wonder if he had played a part in it. "I didn't know where to go when I got back," Jason admitted, his voice low. "I thought I'd find you, but I wasn't sure what to expect." Lyra's gaze softened for a moment, but only for an instant. Then the coldness returned, and she took a step back. "I'm not the same person you left behind, Jason," she said, her voice almost a whisper. Jason blinked, taken aback by her words. What did that mean? Had she truly moved on? He searched her eyes, looking for some sign that the woman he had known was still inside, but he found none. She was a stranger, and that hurt more than anything else. "I never wanted to leave you," Jason said, his voice cracking with emotion. "I never wanted to go to war, but I didn't have a choice. I thought of you every day." Lyra cut him off with a raised hand. "It doesn't matter anymore, Jason. You made your choice. I made mine." Her words stung more than he had expected. He had always known she was strong, but now she seemed like a fortress, impervious to his pleas. He stood there, rooted to the spot, unable to move or say anything else. The distance between them had grown too wide, and no matter how much he wanted to bridge the gap, he couldn't find the words. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The world seemed to fade away as Jason tried to find a way to reach her, to undo the years that had kept them apart. But in that silence, it became clear that Lyra was no longer the person he had once known. Finally, she turned away, her back straight and her expression unreadable. "I have to go," she said, her voice final. Jason stood there for a moment longer, his mind racing with a million questions, but all he could do was watch as she walked away. He wanted to call after her, to tell her that he still loved her, but he knew it would be pointless. She was gone, and there was nothing he could do to change that.